Okay, it seems that we are live. I want to welcome everybody to the first, hopefully the first, there'll be a second, Latino forum. We appreciate you being here. This is a great crowd, so thank you for coming out. I think this speaks good to our community that we're here to listen about Latino issues, Latino questions, and Latino really hopes. So thank you again for coming. My name is Stacey Zuniga, and I am the president of the Latino Coalition of Weld County. We do a lot of work around here, but I am proud tonight that I am just part of an organization that has put this program on. And there are several organizations around the state who made this happen. And the first organization I want to introduce is the Latino Action Council. And I would be remiss, this is a new group. We just kind of formed, but we have a director in Milo. Milo, do you want to say something? Say hello? No? Milo is the director of this. And he just kind of brought us all together and kind of organized. And we've come together as agencies that serve Latinos to really kind of pull our strength together, to listen to each other from across the state. And it's been wonderful. And this is a product of that. That's going to be testimony. Who is part of the Latino Action Council? Of course, it's us, Latino Coalition of Weld County, Mi Familia Vota, Colorado Working Parties, our Working Families Party, LULAC Chapter 30005, Palato, CIRC Action Fund, the SEIU, and Colored Action Fund. We all worked really, really hard to put this together, but there are other people that became involved and kind of supported us to have these extras, like the translation, and also the streaming on YouTube. And where else is this streaming? And Facebook. So thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for doing the house streaming that makes that happen. Amy Ortiz, who kind of make the buttons so you can catch a Latino Action Council member. If you have any questions, just grab us. Mauricio, who's Translation Services. Thank you again, Alejandro, and Els Seminario, who's doing some stuff with YouTube. So thank you to all those groups. I also want to recognize there's some really important people in the room, and I hope I've been running around, and I hope I didn't miss someone. Let me know if I did. I want to introduce Polly Baca in the front row. Polly was our first ever Latina senator. We also have Howard Cho from the Democrat Party. It's their first chair. And we have Tom Van Loan. Are you in the room, Tom? Did you make it? Thank you. He's the chair. And we have former city council people here. Sandy Elder, who's here. Thank you for coming, Sandy. Did we see Pam Shada walk in? Former city council, Pam Shada. And Bev Wallace, who is the Weld County Dems chair. Now, I heard we have some commissioners here. So Steve Moreno, I did see you. Let's recognize you, Steve. Thank you. Did any other commissioners take out here, Steve? So I am not leaving anybody out. Oh, that's from Morgan County Commission. Welcome. Thank you. Very, very good. Okay, so we're ready to start this program, and you all are also, to me, dignitaries. Thank you for coming out. You are the voters, and we're hoping tonight you get a really good grasp on where the candidates stand on Latino issues. We do have some rules because in case you had a friend drag you here and you don't know what you're getting into, there's a little election coming up real soon. And tonight you get to hear from candidates on their positions for the election that's happening here in just a few weeks. So we have some rules. Our first rule is please, you can take pictures, but put your phone on silent. We are streaming these services. We don't want interruptions for other people who are trying to watch this from home or wherever they are at work. So please silence your phones. The second thing is we want to be friendly. We want to be in a coexistent environment here. And so we're asking you please to not, shout out, not disrupt this forum. We're here to listen to the candidates. And also, we're going to ask you to hold your applause. We know some of you are here to support people that you already believe in, and that's great. But we are streaming this service. We're asking you, please hold your applause. I promise at the end of this program, you'll get to applaud all you want for the people that really impressed you. And, hopefully we'll get your vote. So thank you. But with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to our UNC president, Andy Feinstein. He has something to add and give us. But I want to thank UNC for this. UNC came forward. Yes, far down. Yeah. They donated all this space, including the setup and the people to help work this. So thank you, Andy. I turn it over to you.
You're so welcome. And good evening again, thanks everyone. I'm so glad you're here, and we are honored to have this event here tonight, the Latino Political Forum. And you heard all these wonderful organizations that are here supporting this event. But there's one person I did want to recognize, and that's Patricia Varela Rivera. This would not have happened without her. Trustee of UNC, and then someone with Patricia. But you know that universities, by their very nature, are places where knowledge is generated and ideas, they're freely exchanged. We bring together people to engage in inquiry, analysis, and critical and creative thinking on the most pressing issues facing our state and the world. Universities also have the role in fostering democratic participation, civic engagement, and community building, and that's what we're doing here this evening. Active citizenship begins with being engaged and involved. And it is so wonderful to see such an excellent turnout tonight, and I thank you all for being here. So please enjoy the evening, and I look very much forward to the discussion.
Okay, so now it's time to hear from the candidates. I want to introduce our moderator tonight, Alvina Vasquez. And she's going to go ahead and take the mic from me now, thank goodness. And she will speak to the candidates and give them the information that they need for this forum. Thank you again, everybody, and enjoy. Hope you get a lot of good information.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, candidates, all of you for coming out, for speaking to this important constituency today. And thank you to our audience. Like, I just want to reiterate the translations and everything. It's very important that our audience be quiet to make sure that everybody can enjoy the program. So there is no time for introductions. So when I ask you a question, please introduce just your name and your district and answer the question because we want to keep this program moving. So now our first questions are for our, and it's kind of in our education space. It's our CU Regents and our State Board of Education candidates. So first we'll start with State Board of Education. And I do want to mention that Peggy Prose was invited, but she declined. So Rhonda Solis is here in representing herself. You will have 90 seconds. There's Stacey will be our timer. Please keep an eye on the signs as you see them. It's also my understanding that none of the candidates have seen these questions, so this will be the first time that they are aware of them. And with that said, I will get started. Are we good? Got my sound? Great. Ms. Solis, Colorado HB 1192, the inclusion of American minorities in teaching civil government mandates the inclusion of communities of color, including Latinos, African American, Asian American, Native American, Indigenous, as well as LGBTQ community and statewide social studies standards. We know from years of research, when students see themselves in the curriculum, they have a higher level of academic success, including their higher GPAs and graduation rates, as well as improved mental and emotional wellness. Research also shows that inclusive policies benefit students of all races. What are some other examples of inclusive policies in education that you would support if elected.
So my name is Rhonda Sleep. I'm running for the State Board of Education in the new CD8 district. There are numerous things that we can do to make sure that not only our students, but also our families and community members feel involved in our educational system. We started a family center here in District 6 that actually works along with the families of the children. We've been able to do English lessons, different crafts, things that they can participate in together, volunteer services. And so using that as a tool to work along with the students actually helps the students be more successful. Plus, it's enabled parents who may not, they may be first generation, to really understand how the school system works and how to be an advocate for their child and be part of the educational process.
Thank you. And the same question goes to our next candidate with the dice roll, Yolanda Ortega.
Start with your reading.
What are some examples of inclusive policies in education that you would support if elected? No, that's not. Oh, sorry. My apologies. That is my fault. Oh, I already messed up. Okay. Question summary. The last week, CU Board of Regents voted to censor one of its members for the first time in history. How would you have voted and why? Now we'll start with Ms. Ortega.
Well, from what I understand, first of all, the situation was very unfortunate, as from what I read in the papers. And however, I want to congratulate the regents for taking swift action. I think the censorship was appropriate. For me, anyone who sits in a position of authority has that responsibility, and they should be held to the standards that all the campus community is held, especially that a regent is not held, has to be held to the same law and policies that they themselves have created. So for me, it has to be timely. It has to be investigated if you're looking at a censorship, and it has to be clear what that censorship will do and to get an apology. The other piece of that, it has to be timely and swift and open, transparent, because you want the campus community to understand that this should be a place where this kind of behavior is not tolerated, and they're in a safe place to report it.
Yeah, this. So my name is Mark Vandro. I'm also running for CU Region, and in short, I agree on this. It shouldn't be shocking. This was a unanimous vote on the regions. This was an unfortunate situation. We need to lead. This is why I mean, one of my campaign pillars has been accountability, because I think we need accountability at the university at all levels that absolutely starts at the top.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to switch back to State Board of Ed. I apologize to everybody for the confusion. Ms. Elise, there is currently a nationwide shortage of teachers that was exacerbated by the pandemic. We're asking our educators to do more and more without adequately compensating them. Teachers have alluded to having issues regarding pay and line support within their classroom. What will you do to recruit more teachers, ensure that they are being properly compensated?
So first of all, we need to change the conversation that's happening around teachers. I was really shocked how during COVID and people going remote, how much praise our teachers got, understanding how difficult it is to actually teach kids. And so we went from an area of teachers are amazing heroes, and then all of a sudden we're starting to hear them being villainized. And that has been really hard to witness. So we as communities really have to have their back. And we have to have strong conversations around public education and support our teachers and really talk about the amazing work that they do, and sometimes dipping into their own pockets to make sure that they have things in their classrooms to teach kids. And that's not the way it should be. I think we have to get creative. There was a petition happening. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough signatures, but those are the kinds of things that we need to think about in making sure that our teachers do get the pay that they deserve. We live in Colorado. We have, a lot of wealth here, and we should do a better job at compensating our teachers. That's a huge, they're doing one of the biggest, hardest jobs, and we didn't make sure that they're taken care of.
And your next question is, Latino, Indigenous, and Black students are disproportionately punished and displaced from school for behavior issues, more so than other students in the same circumstances. If elected, what policy would you put in place to combat the school to prison pipeline? And how would this policy develop awareness of systemic and implicit bias and its impact on students and their families?
So this is a tough one because I don't think some people are aware of their biases. It is extremely important to track those numbers in the districts of what students are being reported, and making sure that we're doing this across the board and that it's not just our kiddos of color. I think we have a lot of work to do around these issues. There's a lot of people that don't think that racism still exists, and I would tend to disagree. And so we need to make sure that we are putting policies in place, and unfortunately, that's more at the local level. But that's a strong conversation that we can have at the state level to make sure that it trickles down, that districts understand we need to be tracking that information, we need to be sharing that information, and we need to maybe even have councils within our districts of Latinos that can actually work with the district on these issues.
Thank you. Now we'll switch back to our Board of Regents. Your next question is, the CU system has historically not represented communities of color in their faculty, students, or staff ranks. How have you helped diversify higher education throughout your career?
You want me first, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So your question is, how have we helped diversify throughout our career? That's been a big important part of my career in higher education. I've been a professor for 10 years, and before I started that, one of the most pivotal moments in my life was my wife. She wasn't my wife then. She started college, and she was the first generation student. She was the first. She was the child of immigrants, and the obstacles she faced opened my eyes to the reality of how challenging it is for first generation students in particular to succeed in college. And I started a lot of initiatives at the University of South Carolina to address that. I started reaching out to my students and to other interested or desperately needing students that desperately needed help. I formed a business to bring these ideas of greater accessibility to broader communities. That's one of the biggest reasons why I'm running for CU Regents, is because I believe in accessibility for everyone. I understand that it takes relentless effort, and it starts with all the small things, and that's what I've been doing and what I'm going to continue to do.
Thank you. Ms. Ortega.
I have spent 32 active years of my life in higher education and then beyond, working for higher education even after I retired as the Vice President of Student Affairs. I have to say that this has been part of my whole DNA. I was a first generation student in a place in the East Coast at a private school. I'm telling you, the road there was so hard to navigate, and I learned so much. And I don't think I would trade that experience for anything in the world. I had to learn how to apply, and I didn't have the help. My father in the Air Force, he did not go to college until after he retired. And my mother, who was from Mexico, didn't understand, first of all, the college, even when I was going to school, high school, didn't understand that culture. And so it was the three of us actually learning together. So I understand that, and I have mentored thousands of students, and that is something that gives me eternal joy. As well, I'm part of the faculty and staff for the Chicano faculty and staff throughout my career. I have also helped shepherd a lot of faculty to tenureship. I think that's important. So I would continue to work with student groups and student leaderships, and also faculty and staff leaderships.
Thank you. Your next question. One of the roles of the CU Board of Regents is setting tuition. As the state has reduced its support for higher education, students have faced the heavy burden of paying rising tuition costs. How will you ensure affordability, specifically for low income and first generation students?
Yeah, that's the challenge. That's the eternal challenge. I know the rising cost of higher ed makes it almost impossible. I want to work with advocate for ways in which we can make these, make college more affordable so that students aren't looking at this as going to CU to aspire to go to CU, that they see CU as a place where, yes, they can go and there will be help through endowed scholarships, through working with businesses in the communities, that the communities will be in partnership with them so that they are able to get monies and financial assistance either through working or through grants, and that they will also work with schools. And so that we're working with the K through 12, especially in high schools, to get these students ready so that they do qualify academically and that they are prepared to take on scholarships, applying for scholarships, looking for grants, as well, looking at our staff and those who are on the front line. Those are the ones, the people in financial aid, the people that are advising to make sure that we're advising our students so that they're not going to school for 6-7 years because they can't afford it on a full-time basis, that we're advising them to go in 4 years, that we're advising them to get the scholarships, to get the grants that will help them get through without incurring an enormous cost at the very end when they walk across that stage.
Thank you.
So higher education isn't affordable. And the unfortunate part is that either really is primary or secondary education. Cost of tuition at CU is about what we're spending on K-12 per student. So the trick is getting students through the pipeline faster. The good news is the way to do that is to provide better mentorship and provide better advising throughout. I've done this, you know, when I launched my business, it was hilarious how easy it was to save my clients, the students, money off their education by encouraging them to finish faster. Most students are taking more than 4 years to graduate right now. Most students are also coming in with 15 to 30 credit hours. That's really bad math. We need to do better throughout our universities. It's an embarrassment to our country that we're taking this long to graduate. It's an embarrassment to you. Fortunately, it's one of the few things that we can fix that will make big difference in the amount of money that students are spending. And improving the quality of advising and mentorship also is going to improve the quality of life for students, and especially for disadvantaged students, it's going to help them graduate on time or early with having had high quality experiences and ready to enter into the workforce.
Thank you. And now we're ready for closing remarks. So I will start with Ms. Sweet.
So I served 8 years on the Greely-Weld School Board. I was term limited in November of 2021. And over that 8 years, we did some really heavy lifting. We increased our graduation rates. We passed our first MLO, which is a Milledley override. We also passed a $395 million bond to work on schools that had been needing work over the years, and we never really had a strong plan to do that. One of the reasons I decided to run for the state board is right now that lens is not at the state board. A local district and a local board has a lot of authority, and there are certain things that can affect us that we need to make sure that there's somebody with that lens at the table.
Thank you.
I feel qualified for this position. I have spent my career in administrative positions where I've had to work with very complex financial budgets. And I have also have a love for the academics and for the students. And so the other piece of that is that I've served on the Auraria board with chancellors and trustees and presidents. And so I'm excited at the opportunity to do this again. Thank you.
I've been in higher education as a professor for the last 10 years. I've been trying to make the lives of students better. The reason why I'm running is because I'm sure that for most students, things are getting tougher in higher education and better, and I want to change that. I don't necessarily have the answer to every single problem. That's not realistic, But what I can say is that I'm trying to make the necessary steps to prove accessibility, things like having a Spanish language website, things like all of my literature is in English and Spanish. If anyone hears from me, they will be able to have fully accessible access to what I think. If you have questions, you can ask for Spanish.
That concludes our education portion. I do want to thank our candidates for running for office. It's a huge undertaking. We make it for being here today. Yeah, that's good. As a reminder, there are refreshments in the back if you want to grab some water.
Now we'd like to ask the state candidates to please come up and take the stage. We may have to do something with mics. But let's see where we are when you get us there.
Sure.
Milo. Wait, Texas. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Let me do that for us. Just actually, yeah. Well, yeah, that one's.
This.
They were not. Okay, perfect. We're good. Okay, so that was the right question. One person and then, okay, so, good. You guys say water?
And we're back. Thank you all for helping us coordinate that. We have a lot of candidates that turned out tonight, so thank you all for your participation. Because there are so many of you, we're going to ask you to go down the line and introduce yourself and what you're running for.
My name is Lisa Cholet and I'm running for House District 65.
Good evening, Jennifer Parenti, running for House District 19.
Ryan Armias running for House District 64.
Mary Young running for House District 50. She, her are my pronouns. Thank you.
I'm Spring Erickson and I'm running for House District 48.
Richard Webster running for House District 64.
Brian Gonzalez running for House District 50.
I'm Mike Lynch and I'm running for House District 65.
Thank you all. I just want to remind you all that this is a forum and not a debate, so we'll ask you to keep your answers focused on the audience and not each other. And you have a minute and 30 to answer your questions, and then your closing will be 30 seconds. So our first question, we're just going to go down the line. You're in the order of your dice. So we'll go that way. First question, in 1963, Federal Equal Pay Act bans wage. Sorry, that was a weird way to say that sentence. Okay. The 1963 Federal Pay Act bans wage discrimination based on gender, but not until the 2021 passage of SB 21087 did migrant workers receive workplace rights for minimum wage and overtime pay for field work in Colorado. They also were granted restroom breaks, clean drinking water, and restroom facilities at the work site, which are basic human rights. Many farmers express worries over the bill due to rising costs. What is your opinion on the impact of this bill and why?
First, it seems sad to me that we need to pass a bill like that. My opinion on the impact is that it sets a standard, but it doesn't really guarantee anything. Women have been fighting for equal pay for as long as I can remember, and ideals are great, implementation is better. I believe that from a legislative standpoint, it's imperative that we are not only setting policy, but we're setting policy that has some teeth that ensure that those things are being followed through with. And a way for migrant workers to contact local officials and file a complaint when that isn't being followed. And while I'm empathetic to rising costs and rising labor costs, frankly, that is the cost of doing business in America. And if people are living and working in America, then they should all be treated 100% equally, equal pay, basic human rights, all of those things. And so as a legislator, I would push policy that ensures that and improves that access.
Thank you.
I think it's very important that we acknowledge the importance of every job and function that we do in our society. And that every person who is performing work is doing work that we have deemed as necessary and therefore should be paid good wages that give them the opportunity to raise a family and live with healthcare, affordable and safe housing, and a good quality of life, regardless of the nature of the work that they are doing. That's a fundamental principle that I have always applied to my work and to my community and to my interactions with community. So I think that we have to continue to make progress in that area. And I would echo Lisa's comments about enforcement. We need to ensure that we're not passing laws that aren't enforced and that we have no enforcement mechanism for. And so I would also support efforts to ensure that employers in our state are following the laws that have been passed. So thank you.
Thank you.
I would have to agree. I think everyone deserves the same human rights. Everyone deserves to be paid for the quality of their work. And I believe no matter what it is across the board, we all deserve the same ability to get the same quality of life and live the American dream. If people are here to do work in America, they're basically here living the American dream as well and should be able to be afforded the same quality of life as anyone else. And again, I agree with the same minimum wage, everything that's been passed as far as pay for work, quality of work. That's
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I happily voted for that bill. Having spent my time in this community for 40 years, I've worked with many families who are migrant workers, and definitely the equal pay was very essential part of this bill, but the working conditions too were part of that, which is always what we have to evaluate work about. We have to look at what we're expecting people to do. And we had long discussions about the use of the short hoe, which really concerns me that we are still using it in the 21st century. The final piece is talking about implementation and enforcement. As I talk to community members here in House District 50, I hear that we are not totally implementing this law the way it was written. And it is always important to provide follow-up for these very important issues.
Being from southern Will County and into Adams County, which is where District 48 is, we see field after field after field. And this is the backbone of where we are raised and where we are from. And the workers in those fields are the backbone of America because they feed America. And we need to protect them and we need to make their labor not as hard as it is. And I think that is something we are working towards. You can see those improvements coming in those fields. And that's important for all of us, but we need to continue as forever, as Dr. Young said, we need to continue to change things and develop better farming equipment even to help make that. And if that takes policy to do, then that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Sure. In 1963, federal Equal Pay Act bans wage discrimination based on gender, but not until 2021 passage of SB 21087 did migrant workers receive workplace rights for minimum wage and overtime pay for field work in Colorado. They also were granted restroom breaks, clean drinking water, restroom facilities at the work site, which are basic human rights. Many farmers expressed worries over the bill due to rising costs. What is your opinion on the impact of this bill and why?
Well, first of all, just like the rest of the panel said, human rights are civil rights. And all people working in the United States should have that right. As a school teacher, over my many years of being a teacher, there was one time where I went into Eton. I actually saw one of my students babysitting his brothers and sisters. And I was kind of appalled at working conditions. Of course, we need to make sure that this is implemented, the law is implemented correctly and decisively. And it needs to be done. If we're not doing that, something's wrong with the bill itself, the law itself. And so we need to make sure it's implemented. I can't even believe that some people are living in such a way, but they are. They are right now. And some of my students are right around I didn't know them right now. So we have to make sure this law is implemented.
Thank you.
Well, first, I want to thank the sponsors for having this debate and just everyone here. I really appreciate it. To answer the question, I do believe in, I echo pretty much what everybody said, that it is necessary and we have to treat our workers with respect. And I don't think I'm at all out of line with the people on this panel who have echoed that same thing. Now, with respect to rising costs, what I propose that we could amend in that specific bill is providing tax credits for agriculture people who obviously cannot make the cost. I think we should incentivize that, and again, enforcing the law. I mean, the fact of the matter is we have too many laws. We have to enforce the laws we already have, and this is one of the laws that we should enforce. But we do need to make sure that everybody, especially migrant workers, are treated equally and have good working conditions in whatever field they choose to do.
Thank you.
So I did not vote for this bill, primarily because, I mean, not because I don't believe that we need to treat people fairly, that people need to have good working conditions. But this particular piece of legislation was put forward without a lot of consideration from the other side. And this is unfortunately what we see going on in Denver when there's a super majority on one side or the other. It just wasn't quite done. And you know, we heard a lot of stories about agricultural operations where those migrant workers became part of those families. And it was kind of an insult to those folks that had done a good job in taking care of those people. And now they have to respond to an overbearing government that's telling them which implements they have to use and how to do their operations. By all means, don't hear me wrong here. I am completely for making sure that we're treating people fairly. But I think that comes from us as good humans that are running a business. Obviously, if you are not treating people fairly, you're not going to get your workers back. And so I would take a little more of a free market approach to this bill. And it does a lot of good things, but I couldn't vote for it because I think it was a little bit of an overreach.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna start, can we go back that way?
Yeah, we'll go to Jennifer.
Okay, Jennifer, you're gonna answer first next, and then Lisa, you'll go last. Okay. In an average year, 769 people die by gun violence in Colorado, with a rate of 13.5 deaths per 100,000 people. This year, the Latino Policy Agenda poll found that Latinos polled would support the following policies. Mandate universal background checks for all firearms sales, 85%. Increase legal age from 18 to 21 to purchase assault rifles, 75%. Implement a 10-day waiting period to purchase a firearm, 75%. Ban the sale and purchase of assault rifles, 66%. Research has shown that states with fewer gun law restrictions experience 63% more mass shootings with an assault weapon. What is your perspective on current gun accessibility? If elected, what policy would you create to reduce gun deaths in Colorado?
Thank you for this question. It is extremely important. I think a number of people in the room know that my personal background is that I was in the military for 20 years. So I have a lot of experience with guns and being in a profession that was around guns for a long time. We have more control in our US military over weapons and who can touch them and when than we do in our civil society. And it's unacceptable what we've allowed to happen, in my opinion, in terms of gun ownership in this country. Now, that's not to say that I am against the Second Amendment. I am completely for the Second Amendment, but with freedom comes responsibility, and gun owners have to start taking more responsibility for their weapons. Safe storage, ensuring that they stay out of the hands of people who aren't authorized to have them, and making sure that they're contributing to an environment of safety around guns in our community. I support all of the measures that you talked about, and I'm proud to be endorsed by Moms Demand Action and Colorado Ceasefire as a gun sense candidate, and will promote all of those measures in the legislature. Thank you.
I'm also career military, spent 22 years in the military, and during my time in the military, I did have personal firearms on an active duty base that were legally stored in our armory. As a firearms instructor, as a 10-year law enforcement officer, retired from military and law enforcement, I completely support Second Amendment. I'm actually a firearms instructor. I teach concealed carry classes and tactical classes to people with firearms safety. That's why I'm more of a proponent for concealed carry, because that requires people to have the training that they need to ensure that they know the laws of the state, the nation, and otherwise safety. I do agree with safe storage. I always encourage people, they need to store their firearms safely and make sure that they are not getting in the wrong hands, just like what was just spoken. The biggest concern is putting more bans and restrictions on legal gun owners is tying the hands of people that have every right to protect themselves from the people that are getting their guns illegally. We do not sell fully automatic firearms in the United States, yet they are in the hands of criminals every day. They're being taken from the hands of criminals every day by law enforcement. Those are coming into our country illegally. So we need to have more control over that. We need to control the illegal possession of firearms. We already do have background checks in place, but we just need to make sure we have ways of intervening those firearms getting into the hands of felons, but not by restricting gun owners from further owning their firearms that they legally own.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question too. I'm going to focus on it from an educational perspective. I, first of all, believe in the Second Amendment and uphold those rights, but I so often look at it from the perspective of youth and families, and I did vote for common sense gun laws such as our safe storage law that we passed last year. And unfortunately, just in the last week, we had a Coloradan who stored a gun in his child's backpack. And that law provides an opportunity to educate people about how important it is to store guns safely. And also, I talked to so many parents who are concerned about sending their children to school safely in today's environment. And we know that there has been a pattern of young men who were abused, who returned to school with assault rifles and really wreak havoc on our school safety. So I am in support of any measure that will really reduce the violence that is leading to young men killing themselves in their neighborhoods and really leading to an environment at schools where families no longer feel safe sending their children to school.
Thank you. I think pretty much all of us on the panel agree that the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment, and we need to protect that. My family are hunters. We have guns. We store them safely. But I also am looking at this as a person who has spent 10 years as a substitute teacher. And again, mental health is a big part, and we need to address that with issues that need to be addressed, because we are seeing more school shootings than there are days in a year at this point. And if you notice, I'm wearing a scarf, which I always wear a scarf. I didn't even think about it until this question came up. We as teachers are taught that we have to have something to be a tourniquet. And as a substitute, I've always worn a scarf, because that can be used in a school shooting as a tourniquet on a student, because we want to save everyone we can. And that's how I come at it. And I would like to address that. This being a new district and me not being a representative yet. I think we need to go down there and we need to figure out ways that we can end school shootings and keep our children safe, because we don't want to have to start doing what Texas is doing and having DNA swabs on kids so that we can identify bodies later. Thank you.
Well, I don't think that everybody should own a gun. I believe in the amendments, but I think we should have regulations. I don't think everybody should be allowed to. I was in the military for a while, and I used the M16. I saw what the M16 does today. Now we're talking about AK-14. Those things blow you apart. Why do you need that in the city? You don't. It's a military weapon. You don't need that coming from a soldier. You don't need that in the neighborhood, in your house. You can't even use that to go hunting. It will blow whatever you got up. So it doesn't make any sense to have those things. And if we need to have them in our society, I think we should vet those people who have it. You should have a license that you should be trained to have. You should not just have a gun or rifles or nothing. I was in the military. I know those things we do. I'm not, we play around and mess around things and everything all the time. Let's get this done. Everybody can't have it. Let's get some committees together, our legislation together, and really talk about what we need to do and who can own these things. You can't have a record, you can't do that kind of thing. You can't be beating on your family or whatever, and own a weapon. No, you can't. You cannot. And so that's why. Yeah.
We have some of the type gun laws here in Colorado, and the fact of the matter is they're not working because we still see an uptick in mass shootings everywhere. So clearly, we have to reevaluate what we're going to do in the right way. I stand for the Second Amendment. Not everybody owns a gun, and there's people that don't want a gun. And I believe, I ask you this: how many people who have committed a shooting were concealed carry people? No. The fact of the matter is, a lot of these people get their guns illegally, just like drugs, right? We have it illegal and people still have drugs. It's the same principle. And look, I believe in having safe schools. I believe we should have school resource officers. And I can tell you, I certainly will not introduce the bill to remove school resource officers that attend those mass shootings right now. There is an uptick. But the problem is, we don't also teach people that gun is to respect life. And one of the things that the state legislature just recently passed was hunter education for seventh graders, right? So young people actually get to know and experience for themselves how it is to operate a gun safely, securely, and how the resources available. But the fact of the matter is, I believe people who want to have a gun concealed can do it the right way. We have background checks. I'm not opposed to background checks. But the fact of the matter is, we have to reevaluate, and it's a mental health issue. Take away the gun, you will see people using their cars, you will see people using their knives, you will see people using bombs, people get apart. If people want to kill people, they will find ways to do it without a gun.
Reading here, I think. So, I remember a day when I grew up and we go to school and you had the shotgun and back of the truck, and I don't remember school shootings going on when I was growing up. So what has happened in our society that has, turned school shootings into a regular a regular event. And I think we don't have a gun issue, we've got a mental health issue. We also have a training issue. One of the bills that he's referring to is, we're taking proactive actions in the state to get behind the education of folks, so people understand what they can do, and understand that they're dangerous. So there's a training issue there. I would like to see us go down that road, and through doing those activities, those are outdoor activities, we're actually helping with mental health of these folks. The other thing is we're going to have databases. Let's make sure that we are being accurate with those databases, and when you go to register to see if you can buy a gun, I'm concerned that some of those databases are maybe a little bit antiquated, and I'd like to see our resources be put towards that. That's something we can do for the state.
Thank you. Okay, you're gonna do it. Oh.
Everybody. It's okay. Right, it always, once you circle around, it messes everything up. So this is that hot topic that everybody runs to their corners and they wanna vote on this one issue often. And as someone who's never owned a gun, but has a son in the military who tells me all about all the guns he plays with, and my husband grew up hunting with his dad, and I don't own a gun because that's my choice. But what I think is important is instead of taking them all away or having a free for all, we really need to approach this with some common sense. We all have to license and insure and do all these things to own a vehicle, and we have to do that year after year after year. You have to check your emissions, all of those things. We need a little bit more accountability on owning a gun. And what that will provide is not restrictions on the legal gun owners, but it provides an avenue where we can propose a policy that has some teeth for people who illegally possess a gun. If you don't report your gun stolen, you're going to be accountable for that gun if it's used in the commission of a crime. We need to stop being soft on the responsibility that comes with owning something that can take another person's life. School shootings are terrible. I'm a native. I was personally touched by the Chuck E. Cheese murders, by the Columbine murders, and by the murders at the theater. But I don't think everybody's guns need to be taken away. We need more common sense action.
Thank you. This is gonna be our final question, and then a reminder, you have a minute and 30 to answer, and then your conclusion, closing remarks will be 30 seconds. So we'll start with Brian. Is that right? Okay. The recent Latino policy agenda poll showed that 1 in 4 Latinos in Colorado are uncomfortable calling the police if they need help. 84% of Latino adults believe that law enforcement does not always treat Latinos with dignity and respect. And over 2 in 5 Latinos have had someone in their household experience discrimination from law enforcement as a result of being Latino. What is your plan to combat inequity and institutional racism towards Latinos and other people of color, specifically by law enforcement?
Well, as a 10-year law enforcement officer with Weimar County Sheriff's Office, I have experienced interaction with everybody. Obviously, criminals come in every culture and every race, gender, and creed. To hear that is unfortunate. That's eye-opening to me. I would encourage anyone from any community, but especially the Latino community, if they're feeling that way, feeling oppressed or otherwise singled out or stereotyped or in any form, feeling like they're being treated unfairly by law enforcement, to bring it up to their local law enforcement community, leadership. So whatever the agency is that they live in, those issues should be addressed. To simply let it go as unnoticed, like it's not going to be taken care of, I think is setting it up for the next time. It's not always a guarantee that there's going to be a Spanish speaking or Latino officer that's going to be able to respond to a crime or a report. So with that, you don't know, people are brought up differently, there might be a language barrier, there might be misinterpreted feelings or gestures. So I would say that if they are feeling untreated, they need to bring it up to their law enforcement leadership in their community to bring that conversation to the table and see how it can be addressed.
Thank you.
I have seen the implicit bias in communities, and as a result, I've, when possible, supported legislation or crafted legislation that addresses these issues. Last session, I did a bill that really was trying to address the prison, school to prison pipeline. It was called Supportive Schools. And one of the things that we addressed in that bill was providing more training for school resource officers, because we realize that so frequently is the responses indicate that people aren't aware of their implicit biases, and that creates so much tension. And we see in schools that children of color are over-identified in these interactions with school resource officers, and we are going to begin to track that information. The other thing is, from a behavioral health standpoint, I think our co-responder model in our community is a beginning step to try to educate officers through relationships with mental health people as they go to respond to potentially high conflict situations.
Thank you. I think that we need to look at law enforcement like we look at teaching and becoming a doctor and a lawyer. These are professions. And we need to start looking for ways to incorporate education where it needs, especially in how we interact and how those implied biases, even as a United Methodist minister, when I was going through seminary, I was being taught how implied bias is affecting the church. So maybe we should start with educating our officers, and maybe even if that means extending their training at police academy longer, so that those things can be taught. We can see a change in our community and the way that policing affects that community. I also agree that we need to start looking at ways to take some of that, every call needs an officer off their plate. We need to start looking for ways that we can use mental health counseling and mental health facilitators that can come out on calls that are not law enforcement based, but mental health based, to help them take that time and de-escalate situations that we're finding are a problem. And maybe in that respect, we could work towards finding ways that the Latino population and other populations can find ways that they feel more comfortable with law enforcement. Thank you. Yeah. The recent Latino policy agenda polls showed that 1 in 4 Latinos in Colorado are uncomfortable calling the police if they need help. 84% of Latino adults believe that law enforcement does not always treat Latinos with dignity and respect. And over 2 in 5 Latinos have had someone in their household experience discrimination from law enforcement as a result of being Latino. What is your plan to combat inequity and institutional racism towards Latinos and other people of color, specifically by law enforcement?
You know, as a person of color, I've experienced that kind of racism. I believe we need to, now there's been talk about that funding that doesn't come. I think they'll be organizing how they're set up. Since Latinos and Blacks cannot go to the leadership department, we should say they represent the Latino population, Black populations also, so they can get them, and then they have the power. These communities have the power to hire and fire people. That's what I believe. We Latino people, Black people, they're not going to go to the leadership. They're afraid. They don't trust them. They don't trust them anymore. I've seen even some friends of mine, I've seen people killed in the streets by police officers for whatever reason. I've seen it myself. As growing up as a child, you have those experiences with buildings. So we need to reorganize, not to fund, We organize how we have it set up, and we need to vet those officers that are coming into the source. And another thing, just before I come, we need to get more people of color on the forces. That's what we need to be. More people of color. This is not enough. And, you know, all the time, I know I'm taking over. All the time, and we don't have that.
You know, I can tell you, for the most part, if people just comply with what the law enforcement officer tells them to do, they get the exact same treatment as any other person. And I can tell you from speaking with the chiefs of Evans Police Department and Greeley Police Department, we had this conversation. And what the chief of police has, at least from Greeley, has mentioned is he's trying to recruit more Hispanic Latino police officers who not only understand the language, but also can resonate with them. There's a notion that the police force is predominantly white. Now, I don't know the specific statistics on that, but I can tell you that, you know, they are getting involved in the community. They want to do outreach. They're working with churches and other nonprofits because they want to break the stigma that being a law enforcement comes with. You know, there's so much disrespect with law enforcement, and I can tell you, yes, there's a few bad people in law enforcement, and we should have what I propose is an open door policy where we should report these people. And it's simple, you know, we should make it easy for people to file, not necessarily a complaint, but a report to get these people and to have disciplinary action and tools available for those people, because we want to hold them accountable, right? And we shouldn't have those bad apples represent law enforcement at the complete degree that a lot of people believe the law enforcement people are. I think it's just wrong. You know, standing with them and working toward getting more community involvement and outreach and attracting those qualified and diverse candidates as well in the law enforcement will definitely help mitigate that.
Well, for the record, I would say almost 80% of anybody who has an interaction with law enforcement is not good. So just, you know, that goes across all races. But I'll say this state has done a really good job of vilifying our law enforcement and really beating up on our law enforcement over the last few years. To the point where we've got a whole bunch of vacancies because that's a thankless job. And we've not done anything at the state level to help that be better. But that doesn't address the issue. I think that the real issue is, but with those vacancies that we have, I think it's important that we do a firm recruiting effort to make sure that those communities are represented in law enforcement by the makeup of that community. You know, it is not just a Caucasian job to be a police officer. We've got a lot of education to do to get those forces diversified. I think that will you know, reduce a lot of this that we're seeing. And we need to open up that field so that minorities understand that is a profession they can go into and encourage them to do that. I think once we start seeing that law enforcement near the community that they oversee, I think we'll see a lot of these issues disappear.
Thank you.
I will agree with my opponent about we need to get more people in law enforcement. We need to pay them better. That is part of why we have so many vacancies in the state. But that aside, I think the assumption that if people just complied, they would not run into trouble it's just wrong. I'm a white woman, obviously, so please you're gonna make an assumption about me if and when they are in contact with me. But my sister is married to a third generation gentleman from Greeley, and she has experienced in the last few years many times where her husband has been stopped for speeding and asked for a green card or things of that nature, and it's immediately assumed that he is not legal or he's doing something wrong just because his name is Pacheco and he has brown skin. And that is a reality in our world. It's become acceptable to be racist. It's become acceptable to be hateful. And this requires a change of culture. It requires accountability. Perhaps that is a citizens board that a Latino person could feel comfortable registering a complaint because that board is representative of all the different races, not just predominantly white. There are a lot of things that can happen, but it takes work, it takes real conversation, and it takes the tough conversation, not waxing poetic about things.
Thank you for this important question. I think one of the first things that we need to do is ensure that the problem can have light shined on it and be exposed. And so to echo some of the other comments, I would work to build a team with a number of the Latino leaders that are represented here in the community, our statewide organizations, to ensure that we have created a safe avenue for people to report their incidents and to report their issues, because we need to hear those stories and they need to be heard officially. Second, I would also focus on education and training for our law enforcement personnel, not only at the academy, but regularly throughout their careers. These messages need to be repeated and reinforced. I would also look at transparency and accountability for officer complaints. We've heard those stories about officers who have multiple complaints against them, and then a real problem occurs, and we all wonder, why didn't leadership take care of this before? So we need those records to be transparent and open. And finally, we do have to encourage community building between our communities and our law enforcement personnel. And I think there are many good examples of how some communities in the state have done that. And I think we can work together to spread those messages.
Thank you. Now we're gonna move to closing remarks, and we'll start with you.
I want to thank the organizers, the Latino Coalition and other supporters, but I also want to thank everyone here in attendance. These kinds of conversations are so critical as we move in our democracy to ensure that we have equity and we have diversity and we have inclusion. I have voted and supported the Latino caucus agenda in the House and will continue to do that. I hope for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to remind all of our candidates to get close to the mic so that folks on. I want to thank all of you attending and the Latino Coalition as well. I didn't really start out to do this. I stood up at our assembly in May and said I would stand up because no one else would. And I believe that if you want to see change in the world, you have to be the change. And that's something my kids at Valley High School taught me. And I'm not the smartest person in the room. And I believe that it takes a conversation to learn from. And I'm here to work for you and learn. Thank you. Thank you.
I would also like to thank the coalition for inviting us to the conversation to have. One thing I do want to point out though, if you like your medical rights, you pursue it. If you like your civil rights, you should pursue it. For some reason, let's keep our state moving, keep our medical rights, civil rights. You know, we are, I mean, yes, there are mistakes and parties, but we're
I'm the proud son of immigrants. My parents came from Mexico, and I understand Latino culture and the Hispanic culture. It's one thing for to hear and see things, but it's another thing to actually be in their shoes and understand. I work with the Hispanic and Latino community on a daily basis at the bank. I work with them within a National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, NARA, making sure that we integrate our community in the market and the economy to thrive, to prosper like never before. And that is what I will bring to the state legislature as a voice to the Hispanic and Latino community, because we've been underrepresented, and the people who take us for granted must be stopped. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for being here. If you wonder what's going on and what's wrong with our government, it's because not enough people get involved in this process. So thank you very much for being here. You know, I'm a veteran, a small businessman. I'm what I call the big 3 C's. I am a Christian, I am a capitalist, and I'm a conservative in that order. I believe that government has some essential purposes. That is to provide safety for us, keep us safe, provide infrastructure to do things that we can't do. And beyond that, stay out of our daily life. I would appreciate your support. You can find me at lynchforcolorado.com.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our candidates.
We gotta go.
Oh,
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I just want to echo everyone else and thank everyone for being here and for the Latino different coalitions to come together to put this opportunity out here for us to talk to you. If you can't tell, I'm really more of a common sense, let's just get down to the nuts and bolts of how we do some things different. Both parties have been doing things the same way for a long time, and I think it takes someone that's willing to work across party lines and really talk about how we get into the solution and provide some real representation for working families in northern Colorado.
Yes, again, thank you to the coalition and to everyone who came out tonight. My campaign in House District 19 has really been focused on rebuilding community and connecting with every voter, including the 20% of my district that identifies as Latino. I am personally very disappointed that both of my opponents declined to attend tonight's event. I want everyone listening to know that I care about your voice, regardless of your background or your political affiliation, and I really welcome you to connect with me after. Thank you.
Again, want to echo thank you to the coalition and everyone in attendance. I'm a hardworking, blue-collar, working-class patriot. I'm a single father, 17-year-old Hispanic son. The last name Armagassi confuses people. But I want to bring my 22 years of military combat experience and here at home, my leadership there and in the military to the legislation, and I want your help to do that. Your vote will be appreciated. You can find me at armagas64.com. Thank you.
Now I will thank all of our candidates for joining us today. My apologies for messing that up. No disrespect and my apologies. So we're going to do a quick switch out and put our congressional candidates up. Thank you all for running for office. It's a huge undertaking. Yes. Okay. I think I'm sorry.
Yeah. He does have some questions. We have 6 questions. That's moderator. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, right.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Get their own microphone anyway.
Oh, good.
Wait a few minutes, let everybody stretching. We wait a few minutes.
Like 1 minute.
We'll get,
You all get 1 minute. We're running a little behind schedule, and so please get your wiggles out. We'll be back in 1 minute.
give my coughs out. And it's suppressing. Sorry, guys. No worry. We had to like all of that. Your front line. Good. I know. Yes.
I'm gonna come ready to take their seats. Yes, can I borrow the mic? I'll be forceful.
You want to start the next segment.
All right, we'd like to have everybody take their seats. We can take pictures afterwards. All right. If I can have the House District candidates sit down real quick. Thank you. All right, we'll get started.
We are running a little behind schedule, so thank you all for your patience, but I wanted to welcome our congressional candidates for CD8. So, as mentioned before, you have a minute and 30 to respond. Please direct your comments to the audience. This is not a debate like moron, so it's a free exchange of ideas. And we will start with our first question. Please introduce yourself and then go into answering your question. So our first question. As you know, Latinos are not a monolithic group, but the largest minority group in this new district. If elected, these will be your constituents. Please tell us what you believe are the biggest needs in the Latino community and how you plan to prioritize addressing these issues in Congress.
Yeah.
Yeah, you goes first.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, absolutely. The Latino population is not a monolith. And I have really experienced the differences in the Latino community as I've grown up as part of it. Being an immigrant, but many Latinos are not. And really what I would focus on is the same needs that every community around us has, the ability to have a fair shake at living in Colorado and living your dream. I grew up with that dream, with the ability for my dad as a construction worker to over 51 years of work, put 4 kids through college on that salary, and allow me to go to medical school and on to being a doctor. As a legislator, when I left my clinic because of the needs of my community, I really focused on making sure that we were lowering prices for people, not just with taxes, but with the cost of healthcare, that we were focusing on things like immigrant rights, farm worker rights, and so many of the other needs that our community has. Creo que es importante esta noche, a pesar de tener traductor, de enfocarme en lo que necesita la comunidad latina, y yo entiendo eso como latina. Tenemos las mismas necesidades que muchas otras personas. Enfocarnos en el precio de la vivienda aquí es algo que yo me he enfocado como doctora y como legisladora, y pienso que necesitamos más personas enfocándose en esas necesidades.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. As you know, Latinos are not a monolithic group, but the largest minority group in this district. If elected, these will be your constituents. Please tell us what you believe are the biggest needs in the Latino community and how you plan to prioritize addressing these issues in Congress.
Sure, and thank you very much for the question, and thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. My name is Barbara Kirkmeyer, and I'm running for Congress in Congressional District 8. These people in this district are already my constituents, and I've already been working for them for several years. So the needs that I hear from the community, where I'm out talking and walking and meeting with folks, whether it's at the door of Hispanic folks or non-Hispanic folks, it's very simple. They want to be able to have a cost.
I'm going to stop you for a second because the sound isn't working. Can you pass that mic now? Thank you.
It's very low.
It's just too low. Yeah, we want to make sure you have sound.
Okay, is that working now?
Minute two.
Yes.
Yes.
I got it pretty darn close.
Okay.
All right, so are we ready?
Yep, sorry.
Okay, so back to what I was saying is when I've been out walking and talking to folks, meeting with groups of folks, their issues, the needs of everyone are pretty much the same. It's about the inflation and the cost of living and how much everything is costing. In fact, in Colorado, we have the largest inflation that's going on throughout the nation. It's hurting people. It's hurting them in their cost of living. In fact, what it's costing us in Colorado is, okay, can you explain to me what that is?
This is 3 seconds left.
Really?
Yeah, I paused. We're good.
Okay, so in Colorado, it's costing anywhere from, it's costing approximately $11,700 more to live in Colorado in 2022 than it did in 2020. This is hurting people. It means that they're losing at least 1 month's paycheck trying to pay for things like food, electricity, housing, and their utility bill.
Okay, thank you. So you'll answer first on the next question.
Okay.
For generations, politicians have complained about the broken immigration system. Despite this, no solution has been found. How would you fix the immigration system?
First of all, I would say that I am committed to working on immigration reform, and I think that starts first with securing our border. The national security crisis that's occurring at the border is just unfathomable to me. I can't believe it's appalling to me. The humanitarian crisis that's occurring at our border is also appalling to me. We need to fix that. First thing you do is you secure the border. We need people coming through the front door, not through our backyard. The second thing is we need to look at the dreamers, the DACA folks, and really understand what's going on there and make sure that we're giving them the opportunity to be here in our United States, in Colorado. When I was down at the border and listening to people in El Paso, Texas, the business community, the local government community, one of the other things they said that we should be doing is working within the community and working to build the economy in other places like Mexico, like El Salvador, like Venezuela, so that people don't feel that there is a need for them to come here because they have opportunity in their own country. And then lastly, we need fair, vigorous immigration reform, and I'm committed to working across the aisle, working with whoever we need to, because as I talk to people in the agricultural community or in any of our communities throughout this district, they're talking about the guest worker program, and there needs to be revisions to that, and it needs to be updated.
Thank you. Well, you know, the entire reason that we are still speaking about this issue in 2022 is that Congress has failed to act for decades. They have used our community as a pawn in many other discussions and have failed to really look at what is necessary, which is comprehensive immigration reform. We need a path to citizenship. We needed it decades ago, and we certainly need it now. You know, this is very personal for me, coming from an immigrant community, coming from immigrant parents who were able to legalize their status and really contribute back to the country that has fostered them and has fostered our family. We need to provide a path to citizenship for the people who are here now, for 11 million people who have contributed to our economy, who are part of our communities, who have paid their taxes and really need a form to legalize their status. We can do that while securing our borders and doing that with 21st century technology to make sure that we're keeping criminals and drugs out. But the main thing that we need is a path to legalization. La reforma inmigratoria es algo que es muy importante para mi comunidad. Y la razón que todavía estamos hablando de esto en el año 2022 es que el Congreso no ha pasado reforma inmigratoria en décadas. Nuestras familias, nuestra comunidad necesitan la dignidad de la habilidad de legalizar su estatus, y eso necesita pasar inmediatamente.
Okay, you will answer first on the next question. Public health experts have reported that toxic air emissions are more injurious to children, Latino and Black families who are disproportionately impacted by environmental injustices because of where they live. Children take in more air during breath than an adult. People of color are more prone to morbid health conditions that are exacerbated by breathing in contaminated air. Oil and gas drilling within close proximity to homes and schools creates fear of potential health risks for many families. Recently, oil operations were shut down for violating air contamination laws. Are you in favor of oil and gas drilling near populated areas, such as schools and communities of people of color? And if so, what will you do to ensure environmental safety to nearby neighborhoods?
Well, as a pediatrician, I really love the focus of this question on children. We always say that they are not little adults. The way that they react to environmental pollution, to so many other different aspects of climate change is very different than adults. And so it disproportionately affects them. That is why, as a state legislator, I really focus on my work on toxins, like on Senate Bill 181, which was really a moderate and common sense bill that gave control back to local communities. So if they decided that they did not want oil and gas operations behind homes or next to schools, that was something that they wouldn't allow. And if they were okay with that, then that was a decision that was made at the community level. We do, however, need to accept that climate change is real, that there is science behind it, and that we need to focus on renewable energies, on making sure that not only are we protecting an important aspect of our economy here in Colorado, but that we're also preparing for the jobs of our future. En el nivel comunitario es muy importante enfocarnos en la salud de nuestros niños, y la industria petrolera afecta la salud de los niños que yo veo en clínica todos los días. Veo muchos niños con ataques de asma y es importante ver mi historia legislatora. Yo me enfoqué en pasar leyes que le dieron el control a la comunidad local para decidir qué hacer con esta industria.
Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, Senate Bill 181 was not a moderate bill, and it did not give us local control at the local level to ensure that we could satisfactorily meet the needs of the individuals that live within our communities. In fact, it did not do that at all. It did the exact opposite of that. So with regard to energy development here in this county and in this district, I can tell you specifically that from 2006 to 2019, we had an increase of 100,000 people in population. We had an increase of 15,000 active oil and gas wells within this district. And at the same time, we had a 20% decrease in emissions. So as a county commissioner, as a state legislator, I've always been concerned about whether or not we have clean air and clean water, and have worked towards regulations, both as a county commissioner and even as a state senator, to ensure that we have good, clean water, good, clean air. In fact, at one point, as a county commissioner, we offered to the Department of Public Health, the Air Quality Control Commission, that we would monitor and pay for an additional monitoring tower in our community, and we were told no by the health department. As a state legislator, I carried a bill that said, look, if school districts, if oil and gas facilities are not allowed to be within 1,500 feet or 2,000 feet of the school district of an existing school, then new schools coming in should not be allowed to be within 2,000 feet of an existing oil and gas facility. Democrats voted no on that. They weren't concerned about health, welfare, and safety. They were more concerned about politics and putting politics over people.
Thank you. You will answer first on this next question. Recently, the Supreme Court of the United States has repealed the national right for women to have an abortion. When it comes to abortion and pregnancy laws, federal and state legislators are devalued and disrespected a woman's choice. What is your stance regarding a woman's right to choose? Are you in favor or against it?
I am a pro-life candidate. I always have been. I support saving as many lives as possible. I do not support taxpayer-funded abortions up to at any point during the pregnancy, up to including the time that a child is due. That is similar to what we believe what we have in communist China and what we have in North Korea. So I don't support that.
I fully support a woman's right to choose, and I have worked to enshrine that in Colorado. While members of other parties have taken that right away from women after 50 years of it being a fundamental right. As a doctor, I fully understand that this is a medical decision, and that those decisions should be between a family, their faith advisor if they have one, and their doctor. The government should not be interfering with this right. I will make sure that in Congress, that one of my goals is to make sure that we codify Roe v. Wade and give this right back to women. Con el aborto, es importante que esta sea una decisión médica, que se lo dejemos a una familia, una mujer y su doctor, y que el gobierno no quite la libertad de hacer una decisión médica de las mujeres en este estado o en cualquier otro estado.
Thank you. And this will be your final question for tonight, and you'll answer first. For most of its history, the United States excluded people of color from its main pathways of opportunity and upward mobility, causing deep inequities across many aspects of life. Many Latinos still experience race suppression, which is evident in gaps within employment and earnings, promotion opportunity, wealth disparity, and public school quality. What role do elected officials play in ending institutional racism?
I've started to work on this, not just as a legislator, but every day that I saw patients in clinic. 65% of my patients were on Medicaid. A large proportion of them were Latino, and I saw patients from Greeley down to Aurora who were really looking for a doctor who understood them, not just in terms of their language, but in terms of their culture. That is something that I have continued as a legislator to make sure that with every single decision that I made, that I was taking care of my community and the communities who have been disenfranchised. That whether we were looking at the pricing of housing, at the fairness of housing, at the pricing of healthcare, at a woman's right to choose, at education, or anything else that affects our lives, that I was looking at it through a lens that would make life fair in Colorado for everyone. Mi trabajo con la comunidad latina empezó como doctora. Veo la mayoría de mis pacientes están en Medicaid y veo muchos latinos, ya sea desde Greeley hasta Aurora, porque los pacientes estaban buscando a alguien que entendiera su cultura y su lenguaje. Ese trabajo continuó como legisladora, viendo todos los diferentes aspectos que afectan a nuestros hijos y asegurándome que en todo caso estaba pensando en mi comunidad y en lo que ellos necesitaban.
Thank you. I'm a fourth generation Colorado, and I grew up on a dairy farm. I come from a very modest background. In fact, we were very poor. But the America that I grew up in valued and rewarded hard work. My parents taught us at a very early age about debt. They sold us an animal, respected us, expected us to get into 4-H. And we learned very early, work means opportunity. That those people who know how to go out and work. So I grew up in America that valued and rewarded hard work. That's the America that I want for my grandchildren. That kind of America that gives everyone a fair shot at success and an opportunity to prosper. We don't have that America now. The best thing that we can do is make sure that children have the best opportunities to education that they can get. Education equals opportunity. And what we have is, and what I would be willing to do as a congresswoman is support a parental bill of rights that give parents the opportunity and give them the right to decide what is the best educational opportunity for their children so that their children can succeed. What we have found out in this state, that we have over 60% of our kids are not reading at a third grade level. If you can't read, you're not going to succeed. We've got to work on the education system so that everyone has an opportunity to succeed in life.
Thank you. And now we'll go to closing remarks and you'll have the first take at it. It's 45 seconds for your closing remarks.
Thank you. Again, as I said, I come from a very modest background as a fourth generation Coloradoan, and I believe that everybody should have the opportunity for success and that fair shot at it. We have had for the last 2 years, rising inflation, 40-year high inflation. It's killing us with the cost of living. We have neighborhoods that are not safe. We have fentanyl that's flowing across our southern border. We don't have a secure border. We don't have the right for our parents to have the ability to choose what's best for their children when it comes to education. And we don't have a government that is accountable. That is what happened. That is what's happened on the watch of Democrats in control. They're in control of the White House. They're in control of Congress. In just 2 short years, that's what we're in. 25-year high crime rate in this state. That's where we have come. As your first congresswoman from District 8, I will commit to that I will ensure that we will have an economy that is strong. I will work to make our nation and our neighborhood safer. I will ensure that parents have the right and we pass a Parents' Bill of Rights and that we hold government accountable. My name is Barbara Kirkmeyer, kirkmeyerforcongress.com.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, first of all, to the Latino Coalition for putting this together, to every group that helped participated in this. And thank you all so much for being here, and to those who are online for taking the time to really educate yourselves on every single race in this area. You know, in many ways, my parents and my family are typical of this entire district. As a daughter of immigrants coming from a working family who really was able to live the American dream. I was able to go to medical school because of my parents' hard work. And I really thought that that was the way that I was going to give back to my community for the decades that I was going to be in practice. But I quickly saw that the American dream that I had lived was slipping out of the fingers of the families that I saw. And so I decided to go to the legislature to fix that. And now I'm hoping to be your first Latina Congresswoman from Colorado. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And that concludes our congressional candidate. Before you all go, I'd like to thank the candidates and sponsors and the Latino Action Council for today's political forum. Each of you took time to join us either in person and for viewers at home. Thank you all for being engaged. 38% of Latinos in CD8 is the highest number of Latinos in any congressional district in Colorado. And this is our opportunity to show the strength of our Latino community by getting out the vote. Please, this is your call to action today, is to make sure each of us gets at least 5 or more individuals to register and vote in this election. Remember, you can register to vote up to Election Day. We are counting on you. Adelante.
Very good. Good job.